start with you, Karine, if you can grab the mic. What's the state of GovTech from Oracle's perspective? You both are the managing director for France, but you work in Africa, in the Middle East, in Europe, so you have kind of a big perspective from Oracle's. What's the number and what's your word?
Maybe I'm more optimistic than the audience. I would say 6.5. I'm very precise, as every French, you know. But because I'm on the technological side, so I know the technology are there, that the startup are there, so that all the foundation for the digitalization are ready for the state. Some are already started, so this is why I'm still optimistic, but there is a lot to implement yet. But I'm optimistic because everything is there to make it happen.
Karine, we've talked about what government can or should be doing. We've talked about inclusion and opening up the data and procurement changes. What shouldn't government do from your perspective?
Out of political opinion, I would say be locked in with one single technological provider. I think it's a bit controversial, but I do feel government have to be very demanding with any provider. And even if sometimes being with one single provider can feel like more safe or easier in terms of integration, we do think that it will lock them in terms of course, economically it's not valid because of benchmark and pricing, but as well technologically, you mentioned it, innovation is every 3 months, so you need to be able to catch up more innovation than just one provider because they are innovating in different places. And the third one is security, because as well, depending of the criticality of your data, you don't want to use the same provider. And as well, if you have an attack, cyber attack, it's much better to have several providers to at least have partial of your state protected. So we do think interoperability of the provider is a key thing. So that's would be our advice.
How about you, Karine? What's a great example of what's government's doing right?
We work very well with Suprasteria in the UK as well in healthcare, and I would say healthcare and everything around protection right field. It's where we see a lot of good progress, especially in France. I will take the French example with CNAF, so it's the fund for a family allowance. And in 2016, this was la prime d'activité, so activity allowance that was voted, and it needed to be very agile because the simulation needed to be deployed very quickly. And the government made the decision to go with the cloud, so millions of data in the cloud on a very agile platform. And it's true that in a couple of months, it was for the citizen, it was a real benefit because we had, I think, 7 million simulation in 1 month, some days 600 simulations. So it's a way as well to bring benefit to the citizen for something that they care about. It's allowance, and what is very important with cloud, as you mentioned, is agility, because when you change the law after the Gilets jaunes effect, we had to change the calculation of this allowance, and in a couple of weeks it was done. So I think this is the agility as well that government are looking for, specifically in terms of protection and fund and pension, because this is what people feel very quickly. So this is where we see a great success in many countries.
You have this big, broad perspective, sector that's hot, going well, and where there is a gap.
I'm in agreement with healthcare and social, so I think it's going well. I think where we see there is one place, education is one place, but I was seeing more in what we do is all the reform in France around Parcoursup, so how people can choose their career. All of this require a lot of digitalization because it's millennium, it's Generation Z, that they need something very accessible. So that's one element where we need more investment. And the second, I would say, is how the state is managing their people, the HR element. You mentioned mentioned that you need new skills, you need to upskill the people, but how do you become a brand that's where people want to go and join the state, especially around data scientists, around all of this competency, and how you can share all of this across the different ministry and even across the different countries. So I think this is something that private companies are working a lot around, this employee talent management, and they tackle that for the past 6 years. I think the government is a bit late in part of the way they manage their talent and they recruit their talent. So I think this is where technology can help. The 50 billion company, we have similar issue with middle management into transformation. It's clearly the top element for us at the moment. I would say for me the word will be building trust with the citizen. So I think government need to build trust in what they do, in what digitalization will bring to them. So it's a lot of education about this trust, but as well building trust between the government and the big player like us and the startup, understanding what cloud means in terms of data security. And this world is very scary for many people, where my data are coming, what we do with my data. So I think the government has to be very demanding with the technology provider in terms of security and how we can provide this sovereignty they are requiring. So more demanding government is what we need.